All right, well, welcome everyone to another workshop here at the Test Camp. This is Core Academic Skills Writing. It's the first workshop in our series for the Core Academic Skills tests. Let's discuss how learning and practicing test skills will empower your test confidence. Those of you joining us online, well, we wish you were here with us in person, but of course you're welcome to contribute your comments anytime, and we'll include them as many as possible in the discussions. And if you joined us on demand directly through the Test Camp YouTube channel, well, welcome to you too. You now have an advantage because, of course, you can pause or restart or replay that video anytime. Again, this workshop is the first in the Core series, and we suggest that you train in this order. Yes, here's a question. I'm going to repeat these questions for anybody who's listening to the recording. Yes, go ahead. Yes, the communication competencies in writing, reading, and the essay all build upon each other, and that's why we've broken it into 3 workshops. Great question, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment here. Thank you. All right, you likely know by now that around here, or maybe you're new to us, but the motto is prepare, practice, and then perform. Everyone who has successfully completed our training has passed their tests, and how is that possible? Well, because test taking is a skill, and skills require practice. So this is the place where teachers like you come and practice their test skills. Now, to prepare at the test camp is to gain knowledge about the test, that's true, but it's also gaining knowledge about yourself. It's the first step in becoming a skilled test taker. And we start by learning the test blueprint. Now, some of you have participated in the career workshops, right? Either in person or you watched them on demand. Anybody here have seen those? Yes, some of us have. Well, then you know assessing your knowledge of the blueprint is the first indicator of how well you're going to perform on the test. You're going to know the content and you're going to know the rules. All right, so this can be a good first step also to creating what we call my study plan. You create a schedule that includes reviewing and studying the test content along the way while you're doing the test skills training. Let's learn about that blueprint. Here's an overview of the entire test, the core academic skills. The writing test, as you can see up here, has 40 multiple choice questions. These are sometimes called selected response, and the time allotted is 40 minutes. And your score in this section counts for about half of the entire test. In the core writing essay workshops, we discussed how to successfully compose both essays, and the time allotted is 30 minutes each. Now, often tests like this will provide a block of 100 minutes. So you see that you have 40 minutes plus 30 plus 30. So it's up to you to decide how to budget your time. Not in this case. There's 3 distinct sections, all timed separately. So you have 40 minutes on the multiple choice and 30 minutes each on the 2 essays. All right, we all set on that? All right, good. Our first step now is to identify what types of writing questions you can expect to encounter on the test. Now, of course, not the format. We just talked about that. 40 questions are formatted multiple choice, 2 are essay. But during this workshop, we're going to identify the writing competencies on what the questions are built. All right, on this test, there are competencies that we build quizzes for, starting with structure. If you take a quiz at the training site based on this competency, you're going to get instant feedback, and that'll point you if this maybe is a place where you need to review and study. The second competency is vocabulary. Now, this might sound like an easily recognized competency, one that's easy to answer, but I think you're going to find that there's more to vocabulary than you might have expected. The third competency is conventions. Now, we have anybody here that's an English teacher or teacher candidate. What are conventions? Yes, right over here. I'll repeat for the people listening to the recording. Okay, so in English, conventions are basically the rules. All right? So can you imagine what might be asked about conventions or the rules of English on a test like this? Well, if you've been through a teacher education program like apparently you have, especially for elementary grades, you likely know the conventions can be thought of in 3 main areas. The first one being usage, the usage of words. The second rule or convention is about mechanics, all right, spelling and that sort of thing. And the third is sentence formation, right? So this competency tests your ability to use phrases, clauses, and ideas in a way that makes sense to the reader. All right, So here then are the competencies used that are related to writing. However, one of these is not on this test. Okay, not on the multiple choice test. So before we go any further, let's take a moment to introduce yourself to each other there at the tables and see if you can determine which of these competencies is least likely to be tested with multiple choice questions. All right, we'll take a couple minutes and then we'll compare our discussions. Hey, welcome. If you're joining us today online, live online, share your thoughts and we'll include them in the discussion boards up here. And if you're joining us on demand by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this might be a good time to go ahead and pause that recording and think through these competencies. Which one is least likely to be addressed on a multiple choice test for those 40 questions? We'll be here when you restart the video. All right, they have it down here. Okay, your group decided that was which competency is not on the test? Yeah, that's correct. Sentence formation. And why did you say that? It's difficult to show ability to write on a multiple choice test. So how do you demonstrate that? That's why you have the two writing essays. That makes sense, doesn't it? So if you wanted to test your students on forming sentences, you probably wouldn't use a multiple choice test either, right? What would you have them do? Write the sentences. And again, in your case, you're going to compose two full essays. All right? So the last competency then, instead of sentence formation, they're going to add on many of these tests is research. So concepts like citations and plagiarism will be included in this discussion here today. All right, but first let's take a closer look at each competency. We'll begin up there with structure. From the test information guides that are approved by the state departments of education, we know that these are the three main concepts related to English language structure: modifiers, parallelism, and syntax. Now, are you familiar with each of these terms? We know the English teachers over there are. Are you ready to answer test questions based on these three? Well, here's how we're going to find out. Not by looking at sample questions, but again, by turning to your neighbors there at the tables. See if you can explain each concept aloud. All right, help each other out here. Take turns explaining each of the concepts, and we'll come back in a couple minutes and talk about how it went at your table. Okay, so again, if you're joining us today live online, share your thoughts and we'll include them up here in the discussion. And if you're joining us on demand, this might be a good time to pause the recording and explain these concepts aloud to yourself. Make sure that you understand them before we move on. And we'll be here when you restart the video. All right, so everyone has explained the concepts. You're pretty good on these now. All right, so these aren't the concepts, right, that you talk about every day, but as a teacher, you might have to, and of course these are going to be on the test. So here's a sample question based on this competency. All right, can you see why that you would identify this as a structure question? Okay, we're not looking for the answers. Good question. No, we're just trying to figure out which competency these are aligned with. Okay, some questions are based on the competency vocabulary. This can also be thought of in terms of three main concepts: the meanings or definitions of words, the selection of words according to the ideas in the either in the essay or in the writing sample passage, and diction and tone, considering your audience. All right, so can you see what's being asked here in this first question, first sample? Yes, this is a definition, right? All right, so that would be vocabulary. The third competency then is word usage, which can be thought of as the types of words and how they're used. Okay, so here's a sample question for usage. All right, going through to the fourth competency is mechanics, and this competency includes spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. And the format of these questions is a bit unusual, but that makes them pretty easy to identify. So that's a mechanics question. And the fifth competency we said then is research. And the skills related to this competency include determining types of sources, conducting searches, and the proper use of citations. Here's a sample question. All right, here's another sample. Let's try doing this one together. Starting down there at the bottom, website, conference paper, journal, or book. Now let's see what's being asked up there in the stem. Okay, the type of resource. So we could eliminate website. What else can we eliminate here? Definitely conference paper. So that leaves either journal or book. All right, so you see that's kind of how we go about it over at the training center. You'll have plenty of time to practice these over there. So there we have it. That are the 5 competencies, which we now know are pretty much evenly and randomly distributed on the test of 40 questions. And can you see now why identifying the question by competency gets you one step closer to choosing the answer, right? All right, so what do you know then about the percent to pass for this test? Well, the percent needed here at the test camp is always 80%. And that's higher than the pass rate for most standardized tests. So for 40 questions, 80%, we'd need 32 correct answers. Now, your score on this section is counted for about half of your total score, remember. So there's some variation in there. You just want to score as many as you possibly can. Yes, because they're counted with the essays. All right, before we look at a few sample questions, let's consider those competencies. We'll look at those sample questions over in the training center a little bit later. But let's go ahead and consider those competencies in a different way now in this workshop. And that is, which would you choose? So if you could take a multiple choice test today, but you had your choice, it was just on one of these competencies, which is your strongest area today? And which maybe is more challenging. So talk this over with your neighbors for a couple of minutes. We'll come back and talk about this as a group. Hey, if you're joining us today live online, thanks again for sharing your thoughts. We've been including them in the discussion, as you know. And if you're joining us on demand by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this is your last opportunity to go ahead and pause the recording, maybe do a little self-reflection. Which would you choose? Which is your strongest area, your more challenging area, and how do you plan to study for a standardized test like this? We'll be back when you restart the video. All right, very good. Yeah, good discussion about the strategies to review and study for a test like this. I'm going to summarize for those who are listening to the recording. You basically are saying there's no correct way. Is that right? Everybody has their own personal way about going about this, getting ready for this test, but we do need to go back and review. And also, give yourself credit because you've already begun to prepare for this test. You joined this workshop. I hope you've gained some knowledge today, right? Has this helped you? All right, well, thanks for that. Another way to prepare, though, is to select the tools you might need or the resources to guarantee your passing score. When you get to the training center, I think many of you have been there already, you're going to see signs like this along the pathways. And these are coming from those who have gone before you. They send encouraging messages, and in this case, a warning. This message they want to tell you is not to spend your time on money and expensive resources that you just don't need. Commercial webinars are a good example. They'll tell you to avoid paying for free test information and avoid paying for free strategies like those we've talked about here today. You don't really need to pay for a commercial webinar. They also warn about expensive tutors and tutoring companies. This might be an option for more challenging tests, but certainly not for this one. The curriculum goes only up through middle school. Overpriced study guides are also out there sold for profit. Everybody's trying to get your money apparently. Anybody have an experience with this? Study guides. How much are they paying for these out there now? $40 or more. Wow. Well, many study guides available are either free or inexpensive. We're going to show you that in just a moment. And a more effective and inexpensive resource is textbooks. Now that you know about those 5 competencies being tested, you can use textbooks to review and study the test content. So over at the Training Center, you're going to find this area called My Resources, and that's where we post the most popular and update study guides and test information. You can see a lot of it is free. The study guides for this can be as inexpensive as $5 on Amazon. Shows up at your house in a couple of days for a used copy of that book. So you don't need to spend a lot of time and money on resources. Their suggestion is invest in yourself. Practice your test skills. Expect to gain confidence. Expect to gain personal independence and skills that you can share with your students. Now, your pass here to the test camp provides admission to all of these training areas. Up there at the top, you can see that's my test. That's the activity that helps you check your understanding of the blueprint that we talked about here today. And you can also take a pre-test before training. And this is the test camp problem solving system. The first step up there at the top, finding the correct answer by identifying the type of question by the competency. That's exactly what we've been doing here today. You're going to find quizzes and tests over there. That provides an opportunity to practice your test skills while you're assessing your test content knowledge. You'll know where to more efficiently go and review and study if necessary. And the quizzes are all based on the competencies, as you see here. There's even a combined quiz down there. Okay. So questions and answers, yes, they change randomly on each attempt. You get multiple attempts on those. And over at the test area, you'll see practice tests. Again, these will have features on them like you can expect to find on test day. And as you complete the training activities, you can earn points towards a professional test certificate by taking that PostTest also. Then you can expect to perform with confidence that comes from having the knowledge and the skills that you earned during the training. So let's go ahead and head on over to there. There's no better time than now to empower your test confidence.